Wednesday, April 2023. The envelope looked official, white, with a silver border that caught the light like it had something to prove. For a moment I thought it was from the IRS or the bank. Something dull, something predictable. I opened it while the kettle hissed behind me. Inside, heavy paper and elegant typography. Jacob Miller and Emily Collins invite you to their wedding on June 14th. No call. No message. No motherly conversation about dates or dreams or colors. Just a card that felt like it had been sent to a distant relative. I read it 3 times before it made sense. It was my son. My only child. Everything about the invitation felt foreign. The luxury hotel, the unconsulted date, the cold font that looked like it had been designed to keep me out. I set it down beside the pile of unpaid bills and sat very still, my tea growing cold beside me. I thought there might be anger in me somewhere, but there was not. Just a slow sinking realization. I was no longer part of his life. Comment your city below, and like if you know what it feels like when family underestimates you. That evening I called him. My finger hesitated above his name before I pressed it. He picked up after the second ring. His voice bright, careless, the sound of someone who had already moved on from the person calling. "Hey Mom, you got it?" he asked, and I could hear him typing. A keyboard, not attention. "Yes," I said. "I got it today." He made a small sound, approval or impatience, I could not tell. "It's beautiful," I added. "I would like to help Jacob. With the flowers or the planning or—" "It's all handled," he interrupted. "Emily's parents are paying for everything. It's kind of their vision. You just need to show up and not stand out." "Not stand out," I repeated quietly. He laughed, that dry laugh he used to make when he was uncomfortable. "You know what I mean. Just wear something nice." "Not to. Southside." I did not know what hurt more. His words or the tone behind them. Southside, as if the neighborhood that raised him was a stain. As if the years of night shifts, coupons, and second-hand Christmas gifts were something to hide now that he was moving upward. "Of course," I said, though the words felt like ashes in my mouth. He kept talking, details about the venue, Emily's parents, how big everything was going to be. I tried to keep up, tried to sound interested, but the space between us was widening with every sentence. He said he had to go, some meeting, some reservation, and hung up without waiting for me to say goodbye. The room was suddenly too quiet. My hand stayed around the phone long after the call ended. I looked at the reflection in the dark window, my own face blurred by streetlight, an outline more than a person. I sat in my chair by the window, the one with the uneven leg, and listened to the refrigerator hum. My mind went back to the days when Jacob's voice filled the house. He would tell me about his science projects, his dreams of becoming an engineer, the girls he liked but never talked to. I remembered cutting his sandwiches diagonally because he said the triangles tasted better. Now he talked like a man giving instructions to an employee. "Not too South Side." The phrase replayed each time colder. I looked around my living room. Everything there had history, each chair bought secondhand, each picture frame rescued from a discount bin, each bill paid late but paid still. This was the life that had carried him to his, the one he now wished to erase. For the first time I saw the truth clearly. Love could be edited out of someone's story if it did not match the decor. I turned off the light and sat in the dark. The invitation still lay on the table beside the bills, its silver edges catching the last bit of streetlight. I whispered to no one, "All right, Jacob. I will show up. But I will not disappear." Yet even as I said it, I knew that when I walked into that wedding, I would not be a guest. I would be a prop, an extra in someone else's movie. I decided I would go. The next morning I made a list on the back of an envelope. I wrote the date at the top, Thursday, April 13th, 2023, and underlined it. Then I wrote numbers the way I used to tally overtime hours at the hospital. Neat columns, no flourishes. Bus pass, $24. Meat, $36 a week. Cable, $59. Small things that add up when no one notices. I circled each figure and put a line through it. Walk to work, beans and rice, antenna only. I sold the television first. A neighbor from 2 floors down paid $60 cash and left with it tucked under his arm like a suitcase. I sold a stack of books to the used shop on 63rd for $18.50. The clerk wrote the total on a yellow slip and pushed it over the counter. I kept the slip. It felt like a small certificate of value, proof that my things were worth something, even if the price was poor. By the end of the first week, I had set aside $142.50 in a white envelope I kept inside the sugar canister. I wrote each deposit on the outside with a ballpoint pen. April 14th, TV $60. For 15th, books $18.50. For 17th, bus refund prorated $10. April 18th, groceries saved no meat, $14. April 19th, extra shift cafeteria $40. I marked a separate line. For dress. I went to 3 thrift stores before I found the green dress. It was hung on a crooked wire hanger, cotton with a neat waist and a narrow skirt that made me stand straighter. The tag said $89. There were cheaper ones, but they looked like defeat. This one looked like dignity. The clerk folded it carefully and slid it into tissue like it might bruise. My receipt read, $422 green dress, $89. 00 paid cash. Shoes were harder. I tried on satin heels in a department store and saw the way the salesgirl's expression tightened when I asked for a half size. I left. I went to the discount place near the laundromat and found low nude heels for $41.99 plus tax. I put them on my credit card and wrote the figure down as if it were a confession. $45.13 with tax. Due 5/18. I promised myself I would pay it before interest found me. Hair was next. I walked to a small salon on 79th Street with a handwritten sign taped to the window. Tuesday trim $20. The stylist, a woman with soft hands and tired eyes, combed my hair and said, "You have good bones." I nodded like she had given me a diagnosis I could live with. I left a $5 tip. I kept that receipt too. The ink smudged where the steam from my breath touched it. 4/25 trim and style $20. 00. Tip $5. 00. Total $25. 00. I brought home a box of dye the color of dark chestnut and set it on my bathroom sink. I decided against it. The gray in my hair had been earned honestly. The trim was enough. I kept walking to work. It took 38 minutes if I cut through the lot behind the bakery and did not stop to look at the cakes. I wore old sneakers and carried my flats in a plastic bag. On rainy days, I put newspapers in my shoes at lunch so they would not squeak on the tile. I let my body learn a new appetite. I ate lentils with onion, cabbage with vinegar, rice with a fried egg on top when I needed comfort. I bought a bag of oranges and peeled them slowly. The smell filling the kitchen like a small celebration I kept to myself. I wrote down each grocery total and the amount saved by avoiding meat. April 28th, groceries, $21. 84 saved $17. 10. 5/05 groceries $19. 12 saved $18. 33. I sorted my closet. I mended the lining of an old coat and pressed a white cardigan to wear over the dress in case the rooftop venue turned cold at night. I cleaned my purse and found $2.17 at the bottom with the receipts and old cough drops. I added the coins to the sugar canister envelope and wrote a small line. Found money $2.17. On Saturday mornings, I took the dress from the closet and tried it on with the heels. I practiced standing without apology. I practiced the small smile I would use when a stranger asked where I was seated. I pinned my mother's brooch to the left side of the dress and looked at myself in the mirror above the dresser. The face looking back was mine, lined, steady, unafraid. The dress did not make me someone new. It allowed the person who had carried me this far to stand in daylight. I bought a lipstick for $6.29, a shade near rose that did not announce itself. I bought a small tin of mints so my breath would be kind when I said hello to people who did not want to know me. I wrote those amounts down as well because writing them made them true and limited. When the credit card bill arrived, I paid $50 more than the minimum, a blunt message to myself that debt would not be another pair of hands on my shoulders. I stapled the receipt to my list and underlined the date. May 18th, shoes paid. At the end of May, I stood at my kitchen table and added everything with a dull pencil. Dress, shoes, hair, small items. The total came to $165.42 after the cash sales and the savings. It had cost me more than money. It had cost me meat on Sundays and the noise of the television in the evenings and the small comfort of bus heat on early mornings. It had cost me parts of ordinary life that I had turned into a quiet fund for not standing out. The wedding gift troubled me. I could not afford the lists people make for themselves. I bought a good fountain pen with a fine nib for $29.95 and a card with a blank interior. On the inside I wrote, "May your words be clear and your agreements honest. Mother." I did not sign my first name. I left it at that. Sometimes at night I took the invitation from the drawer where I had hidden it and read it again. The silver border still tried to look like virtue. I set it beside my receipts and the address of the hotel printed from the website in small type. I memorized the train schedule and the walk from the station to the lobby, so I could arrive without asking for help. People think dignity is a feeling. Dignity is math. It is subtraction and small choices lined up in rows. It is a pair of heels that will not buckle and a dress that will not apologize. It is the ledger I kept on a scrap of envelope, proving to myself that I could appear in his world without borrowing from tomorrow. On June 10th, I pressed the dress one last time and hung it on the inside of my bedroom door. I polished the heels with a cloth. I set the pen in a small white box and tied it with green ribbon I found at the back of a drawer. I placed the card on top. I looked in the mirror, hair neat, cardigan folded, lipstick tucked into my purse. For the first time in years, the woman in the glass did not look like someone waiting to be chosen. She looked like someone who had already chosen. "I am not less," I said aloud to the empty room. "I am from another world." June 14th arrived with the kind of sun that burns instead of warms. The air felt expensive. Polished, perfumed, rehearsed. I took the early train, then walked 2 blocks to the hotel. The rooftop glass hall shimmered above me like something out of a brochure. Every surface glinted, as if light itself had been trained to behave. I had checked the directions twice, printed them once. I arrived 40 minutes early, afraid of being late. My dress stayed smooth despite the heat. The heels held. I stood near the elevator, clutching the small white box with the pen inside. The elevator opened onto the rooftop level, where an assistant in black led me toward rows of white linen and silver chairs. I spotted Jacob near the bar. He was laughing, his posture easy, a champagne flute dangling from his fingers. When he saw me, he smiled, photo smile, not mother smile. The one that shows teeth but hides time. "You look good," he said, then turned away to greet a man in a gray suit. No hug, not even a touch on the arm. The music floated thin and hollow above the noise of conversation. Waiters carried trays of drinks that smelled like fruit and sugar. A woman with hair like glass passed and gave me a polite smile, the kind people give when they cannot place you but assume you work there. My place card waited on a table by the wall, next to the service door. "Mrs. Linda Miller," printed in silver ink. The tablecloth had a stain near the corner, a faint ring from someone's glass. I sat down quietly and folded my napkin. The other tables filled quickly, people laughing, phones flashing. The center tables glittered with flowers and crystal, a small kingdom of people who mattered. A waiter poured water into my glass and said, "We'll begin shortly." His kindness startled me. I thanked him. From where I sat, I could see everything. The arch with its white roses, the skyline behind it, my son standing near the officiant. Emily appeared a few minutes later, glowing in her gown, her father guiding her forward. The guests rose and turned toward her, a synchronized movement like a tide. I rose too, though no one noticed. The ceremony lasted 14 minutes. I counted because it felt like holding on to something measurable. When it ended, the applause filled the air like static. Jacob kissed her hand, not her face, and the photographer's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Family photos. Parents first, please." I waited, clutching my purse, expecting a signal. He posed with Emily's parents, then with the bridesmaids, then the groomsmen. The photographer glanced at her list. "Mother of the groom?" she asked, scanning the crowd. Jacob turned, pointed vaguely toward me. "She's over there," he said. "Over there." Someone ushered me forward. I stood beside him, careful not to wrinkle her dress. The photographer snapped 2 pictures, then said, "Perfect, thank you." No one asked for another. I stepped aside as the next group moved in. My son was already laughing again, arm around his new father-in-law. Dinner came late. I ate quietly, alone at my wall table. The The service door swinging open behind me every few minutes with bursts of kitchen heat and the smell of garlic. The salmon on my plate was cold, the asparagus limp, the sauce dried at the edges. I cut it into small pieces anyway, because manners had always been my armor. Across the room I heard my name. Jake's voice carried easy joking. See? Mom's always fine with leftovers. Laughter followed. Light, careless, cruel. I set down my fork. For a moment I thought I had misheard. Then I saw Emily's smile, thin, embarrassed, but she did not correct him. The laughter rippled again, spreading like spilled water. The waiter paused beside me, unsure whether to speak. I looked at him and said, "It's all right." My voice sounded calm, almost gentle. Inside something went very still. It was not rage. Rage would have needed hope. This was quieter, heavier. Like a light going out that had burned too long. I folded my napkin, placed it on the table and stood. No one noticed. I walked to the edge of the rooftop, looking out over the city. Cars moved far below, anonymous, their lights blinking in steady lines. The breeze caught the edge of my cardigan, lifting it slightly like a curtain. Behind me, applause began again, someone making a toast. I turned and watched from a distance as Jacob raised his glass. His voice floated over the microphone. To family, those who made us who we are, and those who make us better. I could not tell which of those I was supposed to be. I returned to my seat long enough to collect my purse and the small white box. I looked once more at the table where he stood, shining under the lights, surrounded by strangers who would never know the price of his ease. Then I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and watched the doors close in front of me. The mirrored interior caught my reflection. Green dress, steady eyes, lips pressed together. I looked like a woman leaving work at the end of a long shift. Outside, the evening heat had softened. I walked to the station, the box still unopened in my hand. On the train, I set it on my lap and untied the ribbon. The pen gleamed under the dim carriage light. I held it for a long moment, then placed it carefully in the seat pocket and left it there when I rose to leave. By the time I reached home, the streets were quiet. I unlocked my door, hung my cardigan over the chair, and boiled water for tea. I sat at the kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. My reflection shimmered faintly in the window pane. I thought of his laughter, the echo of leftovers, the sound of other people agreeing. There were no tears. Just a flatness, clean and final, like the moment after a storm when nothing moves. I picked up the unpaid bills and stacked them neatly. Then I reached for the invitation still lying beneath them, and traced the silver border with my fingertip. It looked different now, less elegant, more like evidence. In the silence, one sentence formed clearly in my mind, calm and factual. This was the last time I would pay to be insulted. That night I could not sleep. The city outside my window hummed its usual rhythm, cars passing, dogs barking, someone's television flickering blue light through a cracked blind, but everything inside me had gone still. The dress hung over the back of a chair, the hem brushing the linoleum. The shoes rested neatly beneath it, their soles already marked from the walk back to the station. I made tea, though I did not drink it. The clock on the stove read 2:04 a.m. When I opened my old laptop, the screen lit my face in the dark kitchen, showing lines I had never noticed before, small channels of tiredness carved by years of silence. For several minutes I just sat there with my hands on the keyboard. Words came slowly, as if they had to push through years of hesitation to reach me. Then I began to type. Subject: about the wedding. From Linda Miller. To Jacob Miller. Jacob, you said I am used to leftovers. You are right, leftovers of your time, your gratitude, your love. But starting tonight, I no longer live on leftovers. I am closing your account with mine, the one I opened for emergencies when you were still in college. I am removing you from my insurance policy. I am selling the house, not out of spite but out of respect for myself. You will not understand this now, but one day you might. I have spent my whole life paying the bill for everyone else's comfort. I thought that was what mothers were supposed to do. But a mother who never stops giving raises children who believe they are owed. Love, real love, does not require humiliation. You are a grown man. You can live as you wish, but I will not finance my own invisibility. Mom. I read the letter twice, checking the spelling, the tone, the facts. No bitterness. No appeal. Just clarity. Then I hovered the cursor over send. I took one last breath and clicked. The small sound of the mouse, the click, felt like a gunshot without the echo. The screen went still. Message sent. No way to retrieve it. No apology to smooth its edges. I closed the laptop and sat in the quiet. For the first time in years, I felt something that almost resembled peace. Not happiness. Peace is quieter, less dramatic. It asks for nothing. At dawn, I stood by the window, watching the early bus rattle down the street. The sky had turned pale gray. I thought about the years spent waiting for Jacob's calls, his visits, his requests. Every gesture from him had carried a receipt, even the kind ones. When love becomes transactional, it stops being love. I poured out the cold tea, washed the cup, and began gathering papers. There was a notebook in my desk drawer filled with figures. Taxes, bills, the mortgage balance. I added a new heading in neat block letters. Exit plan. Below it, I wrote numbers that meant freedom. House sale estimate. $320,000. Remaining mortgage. $24,000. Expected after costs. $296,000. I wrote the date June 15th and underlined it twice. By 10 a.m. I had already called a realtor. Her name was Marcia. A woman my age with a steady voice and no false cheer. She came by that afternoon, looked through the house and said, "We can list it within the week if you're ready." "I am ready," I said. She nodded, took photos, and told me she would handle everything. I liked that, someone handling something that was actually mine. Over the next few days, I sorted every drawer. I found Jacob's report cards, Father's Day cards written in block letters, a note he had once taped to the fridge. "Mom, I'll be late. Love you." I put those in a box labeled keep. The rest. Old receipts, expired warranties, cards from people I had not seen in decades, went into the trash. I found my wedding ring in a jewelry box I had not opened in years. The gold had dulled. I weighed it in my hand for a moment, then set it in the small dish on the counter where I kept keys and loose change. It looked ordinary there, just another object no longer needed. When the realtor's sign went up in the yard, I did not feel regret. The house had been a place of endurance, not joy. Every scuff on the floor was a mark from carrying too much alone. The first offer came within a week. Full price. I accepted without hesitation. 2 weeks later, after the paperwork was signed, the sale closed. My account showed a wire transfer of $345,000. The numbers glowed on the screen, clean and unburdened. I withdrew $500 in cash and put it in an envelope marked first month. Then I bought a one-way ticket to a small city 2 hours away. Nothing famous, nothing crowded, just a place with trees and a bookstore I had read about online. When the moving truck came, I gave away half of what I owned. The rest fit neatly into 10 boxes. As the driver carried them out, I looked around the empty rooms. No echoes, no memories sharp enough to cut anymore. Just space. Before locking the door, I left the house keys on the kitchen counter. I also left one thing more. The framed photo from Jacob's high school graduation. Him in his cap and gown, my hand on his shoulder, both of us smiling like the world was certain. The silence of the empty house felt merciful. As the truck pulled away, I whispered to myself, "My money is off the table." The phrase settled in me like a final signature on a long overdue contract. By the time the train crossed the river toward my new city, the sun had set. Lights rippled on the water below. I leaned my head against the window and watched the reflection of my own face. Older, yes, but unburdened. In my bag was a new notebook, blank except for the first line I had written before leaving. This is not an ending. This is an audit of what I gave away and what I am reclaiming. The rhythm of the train felt steady, almost like breathing. When it stopped at the station, I stepped onto the platform and smelled rain in the air. It was a new kind of quiet, one that did not demand explanation. For the first time in decades, I was alone without being lonely. The apartment I found sat above a coffee shop that smelled of roasted beans and vanilla even with the windows closed. It was small, a single bedroom, narrow kitchen, no balcony, but clean and sunlit. When I signed the lease, the landlord handed me 2 keys on a plain ring and said, "Welcome home." I liked the sound of that. Home without obligation. The first week I lived among boxes. I stacked them neatly against the walls, opening one each evening as if pacing myself through a long conversation with my past. Inside were simple things. Dishes, photographs, a quilt my mother had sewn. Each object carried a trace of the woman I used to be, but none of them demanded anything from me. I found work at a small bookstore 2 blocks away. The owner, a quiet man named Peter, hired me after a 10-minute interview. "You'll fit in fine," he said. "It's mostly sorting and helping people find what they already know they want." I liked that too, the idea of helping people find what they already knew. My days fell into a rhythm. I opened the shop at 9, wiped the counters, and brewed the first pot of coffee. The customers were steady: teachers, retirees, young couples looking for cookbooks. The register chimed softly when I rang up sales, a sound that became a kind of heartbeat. I ended each day tired but peaceful, the kind of tired that comes from honest work rather than constant giving. Nights were quiet. I cooked small meals, read by the lamp, and sometimes took walks by the river that ran behind the building. The water moved slowly, carrying light on its surface like liquid glass. I told myself that every woman who has been drained dry should live near water. It teaches you how to flow again without asking anyone's permission. It was almost a month before someone from the old life found me. One afternoon, the bell over the shop door rang, and I looked up to see Emily standing there. She wore beige, always beige, like a color designed not to offend, and carried a leather purse too big for her frame. Her posture was perfect, but her face looked drawn. "Linda," she said softly. I put down the stack of books I was pricing. "Emily, I hope you don't mind me coming." I didn't know where else to go. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us smelled of dust and coffee. Then I gestured toward the small table by the window. "Sit." She did, carefully, as though the chair might reject her. "You've heard from Jacob?" I asked. She nodded. "We're not doing well. He's staying with my parents for now. Things got complicated after the wedding." I waited. Silence is a good truth serum. Finally, she said, "He's lost his job. The bills piled up. We're trying to sell the apartment." "And what is it you came to ask me, Emily?" Her eyes filled quickly, though I could tell the tears were rehearsed. "I came to ask what you want. Maybe we can make things right." I folded my hands on the table. "If you came here to ask for money, I'll save you the trouble. I have closed that account in every sense." She shook her head. "No, I swear it isn't about money. I just thought maybe you'd want to know how he's doing. He misses you." I studied her face. She was young, but not as young as she acted. The lines around her mouth were already forming from years of polite manipulation. "Emily," I said calmly, "your husband is not a boy. He made his choices. I made mine." She looked down at her hands. The diamond on her ring finger had lost its shine. "He's different now," she whispered. "He talks about how he ruined things. He says you were the only steady thing in his life." I felt nothing, no triumph, no sorrow. Just a quiet confirmation of the truth I had already learned. Remorse is often a performance for the audience you hurt. "I wish him peace," I said. "But I am no longer part of his story." Emily looked up, startled by my tone. "You really mean that?" "Yes. I have stopped giving my life away to other people." For a long moment she just sat there, the weight of that sentence pressing between us. Then she rose, smoothing her skirt. "You seem peaceful," she said. "I am," I replied. "It's what happens when the begging ends." Her eyes softened, not with affection but with something that looked like envy. She nodded, then turned to leave. At the door she paused. "He'll want to see you one day. I hope you'll let him." "If he ever learns to come without taking," I said. When the door closed behind her, the bell jingled lightly, and then the shop fell back into its gentle hum. I stood by the window for a moment, watching her walk down the street toward her car. She looked small under the wide sky. I made a note in the shop ledger before locking up for the night. June 27th, Emily Collins' visit. No transaction. Back in my apartment, I boiled water for tea and opened the window. The river outside caught the last light of the day, gold sliding into gray. I thought about the word peace. It was not something anyone gave me. It was something I claimed by refusing to explain myself anymore. Before bed, I opened my notebook, the same one I had carried on the train. Under the first entry, I added a new line. "Peace begins the day you stop rehearsing other people's excuses." I closed the book, turned off the lamp, and slept without dreams. When morning came, the sun poured through the window, warm and ordinary. I made coffee and watched steam rise from the mug. For the first time in years, I realized I had nowhere to be except exactly where I was. By late autumn, the air along the river had turned sharp and metallic. The maples outside the bookstore lost their leaves one slow handful at a time. I swept them from the front step each morning before unlocking the door. Business stayed steady through October. Quiet people buying thick novels for the season ahead. Life had become simple, disciplined, and mine. Then one Tuesday afternoon, I looked up from the counter and saw him. Jacob stood in the doorway, thinner than I remembered, a gray cast beneath his skin. His suit jacket hung loose, and his shoes were scuffed. He looked like someone who had been wandering too long in a city that no longer knew his name. "Mom," he said. The word sounded foreign, like he was trying it on again after years of disuse. I said nothing. I let the silence settle between us until he stepped forward, uncertain, like a child in an unfamiliar store. "I didn't know where else to go," he said. "You found me easily enough," I replied. "What do you need, Jacob?" His hands trembled slightly. "I don't need anything. I just wanted to talk." I nodded toward the cafe next door. "Not here. The customers will be in soon." He followed me like a shadow. The small cafe smelled of cinnamon and espresso. We sat in the corner booth. I set my hands flat on the table, steady as ledgers. He kept his folded, knuckles white. For a while he just looked at me, as if trying to reconcile this calm woman in a gray cardigan with the mother he had once controlled so easily. Finally his voice cracked. "I messed everything up. I waited. Emily left," he said. "Her parents stopped helping. The apartment's gone. I tried to fix things, but I couldn't." He paused, swallowed. "I miss you." The words hung between us, soft but heavy. I studied his face. The boyish jawline still there under the exhaustion. The eyes that used to sparkle when he brought me drawings from school. But behind them now was only fear. "No," I said quietly. "You miss convenience." He flinched. "That's not fair." "It is factual," I replied. "Convenience is not the same as love." He leaned forward, desperate. "Mom, I know what I said at the wedding was cruel. I can't stop thinking about it. I was showing off, trying to fit in." "By mocking me," I said. Tears formed in his eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to make things right. I could stay for a while, maybe find work here." "We could." "Jacob," I interrupted. "You are not coming to stay with me. You are not coming to start over at my expense again." He looked at me as though I had struck him. "So that's it? After everything?" "Yes," I said. "After everything." His breathing quickened. "You used to say family was everything." "I did," I answered. "Until I learned that family without respect is just debt with a last name." He pressed his palms to his face, shaking his head. "You don't mean that." "I do," I said, and my voice stayed level. "I meant it the day I stopped financing your life." He looked around the cafe, then back at me. "I don't even recognize you." "You never tried to," I said. "You recognized what I gave, not who I was." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The espresso machine hissed softly behind the counter. Outside, the wind rattled a metal sign against the glass. I watched him realize that there would be no rescue this time. Finally, I said, "You are a grown man, Jacob. You will figure this out or you will not. But I will not be your safety net. I am not an emergency room." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," I told him. "Go live your life and let me live mine." He nodded slowly, defeated. Then in a small voice he said, "You don't even hate me, do you?" I looked at him, truly looked. I saw the same child who once fell off his bicycle and came running to me, crying, and how I had kissed the blood from his scraped knee. I saw the man who had stood beside a woman in a white dress and laughed at me across a room full of strangers. Both versions of him existed, and I could no longer carry either one. "No," I said softly. "I don't hate you. I don't forgive you either. I simply see you." He lowered his head. Tears slipped onto the table. I did not reach for him. Love had become something silent, stripped of rescue. After a while he stood. "Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Jacob." He walked out into the gray afternoon, shoulders slumped, the bell over the cafe door chiming once. Through the window, I watched him cross the street and disappear among the moving cars. I sat for several minutes, listening to the sound of my own breathing, the slow rhythm of a woman who had finally stopped bargaining. When I left, the sky was beginning to clear. I walked back toward the river, the wind cool against my face. A gull circled overhead, then vanished into the pale horizon. For the first time, I realized victory does not always look like triumph. Sometimes it looks like absence, the silence that follows when the begging ends. That evening, I returned to my apartment, lit a candle, and wrote a new line in my notebook. Peace is not forgiveness. It is the decision to stop being harvest for other people's hunger. I closed the notebook, blew out the candle, and watched the smoke rise slowly through the still air. Somewhere beyond the river, my son would be learning how to live without my wallet and without my shadow. And I, finally, was learning how to live without apology. Winter came quietly that year. The river froze in thin sheets that cracked in the morning sun, and the bookstore grew busier as people sought warmth among the shelves. I had grown used to the rhythm of my new life, the bell over the door, the smell of coffee and paper, the sound of rain tapping on the awning. It was a steady kind of peace, unadorned, durable. Then one afternoon in early February, I found a small envelope wedged under the door when I came home. The handwriting was large and uneven, the kind that still hesitates on curves. The return address said Miller, Oak Ridge Apartments, Unit 4B. Inside was a letter written in blue crayon. Dear Grandma Linda, my name is Ava. I'm 6. Daddy says you make books. Can I have one? I love to draw. Love, Ava. There was a sticker of a yellow star at the bottom. I sat at my kitchen table, reading those words over and over. 6 years old. That meant she had been born not long after the wedding, conceived when Jacob and Emily still believed money could keep love alive. I had never met her, never even known her name. The letter did not ask for money. It asked for a book. The next day, I went to the bookstore early and found a blank journal with thick pages that could hold crayons or pencils. At home that night, I stitched a small fabric cover for it from the leftover piece of green dress I had worn to the wedding. The thread slipped through the fabric easily, neat and deliberate. When it was finished, I tied it with a ribbon and placed it in a box lined with tissue. Inside the front cover I wrote, Dear Ava, draw everything you feel. The world softens when it is drawn. Love, Grandma Linda. I mailed it the next morning, no return address, only my name on the corner. The days that followed felt lighter. I thought of her sometimes while shelving children's books, the small hands turning pages, the innocent seriousness of early imagination. I did not expect an answer. The act of giving without depletion was enough. But a week later, another envelope appeared in my mailbox. This one decorated with stickers of flowers and crooked hearts. Inside was a drawing in bright marker. A woman with gray hair holding hands with a small girl in a red dress. Above them in block letters it said, It's us. Someday. I traced the drawing with my fingertip. The woman's smile was wide, her arms strong. The little girl's hair stood out in uneven lines. It was not a request. It was a declaration. That evening I took the drawing to the bookstore and pinned it behind the counter next to the schedule. The customers smiled when they noticed it. Your granddaughter? One asked. Yes, I said. She writes letters. By spring the ice on the river had melted. Birds returned, making nests in the trees by the water. I began spending Sunday mornings at a small park nearby, sketching with the cheap pencils we sold in the shop. It was something I had not done since Jacob was a child. One afternoon in May, I received another letter, this time written in steadier handwriting. Emily's. Linda, Ava talks about you all the time. She carries the little book everywhere. Jacob is working now, nothing fancy, but he's trying. I hope you're well. Ava would like to visit you. Emily. I read it twice, then set it aside. The words he's trying did not move me. But Ava would like to visit you stayed with me through the evening. I did not answer immediately. Some decisions should steep like tea before being poured. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon as I was locking the bookstore, a train horn sounded in the distance. I turned toward the station 2 blocks away and saw a small figure on the platform, waving a bright jacket sleeve. Behind her stood Emily, cautious but smiling. Ava ran toward me the moment she saw my face. Her little boots clattered on the pavement. When she reached me, she stopped breathless. "Grandma Linda?" she asked. I nodded. She threw her arms around my waist, hugging with the full strength of a child who has not yet learned to hold back. Her hair smelled faintly of strawberries. "I know a new word," she whispered against my coat. "Infinity. That's you." I felt something in my chest open quietly, like a window that had been painted shut for years. I looked at Emily. She stood a few paces away, eyes lowered, her hands gripping the straps of her bag. I gave her a small nod. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, only acknowledgement. "Come on," I said to Ava. "Let's get you a cookie from the shop." We walked hand in hand down the block. She told me about school, about her cat, about how she wanted to be a scientist and an artist at the same time. I listened, memorizing every word. In the bookstore, she pointed at the drawing pinned behind the counter. "That's mine," she said proudly. "Yes," I replied. "It reminds me to keep my heart open but my wallet closed." She laughed, not understanding, and reached for the jar of cookies near the register. We spent the afternoon reading picture books at the back table, her voice tumbling over the words, mine following gently to correct her. Outside, the light softened. When the day ended, Emily thanked me quietly. "She needed this," she said. "So did I answered. After they left, I closed the shop and walked to the river. The sky was turning gold, the water slow and reflective. I stood there a long time, the cool wind brushing against my face, the child's laughter still ringing faintly in my ears. It struck me then. I no longer lived on what was left over. I lived on what remained: peace, truth, and the simple abundance of a small hand in mine. I went home, set Ava's new letter beside the first one, and wrote in my notebook, "Love that does not drain you becomes legacy. Boundaries do not end love. They preserve it." The candlelight flickered over the page. I smiled, closed the book, and let the quiet wrap around me like a promise kept.